SpongicX here with more footage from Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, showing off some custom stages. Right here we have one that I created based off my series, Knick Clunk and Treela. Here we have Nick. This is actually one of the first custom stages I made in this game, and I really like how this one turned out, especially with the tail, how it moves. It took me a while to figure out how to get that working though, but however, although the stage looks nice, it honestly doesn't play very well, and you'll kind of see why eventually, because here I'm fighting against a CPU player of NES, and eventually the CPU got brain dead during the stage. He couldn't figure out how to get back up on like a higher ground. So, you know, it's like if this were a common player, they probably would have used the instinct to use PK Thunder to aim to get back up on the platform, but it's like the CPU can't figure out the stage because it's not a stage that was programmed into the game. It's a custom stage after all. And so the best thing that NES could do is just stay down there and keep jumping in place, and it gets very tiring after a while. And I tried going back to edit the stage, add like a ladder or something. Unfortunately, this stage is already used up all of its resources, so I can't add anything else to this stage, unfortunately. It's at its maximum capacity for what you can put in this stage. And that's a real shame, because I really liked how this one turned out. I don't want to remove anything from the stage. I don't want to try redrawing it either, but it's still a pretty fun stage, but it's not for every character, unfortunately. As you can see, Nick has a little fireball that he's shooting out of his hand because he's a squirrel with fire power, so I like how I was able to do that. I was even able to have it move up and down, and that's one thing you couldn't do in the Wii U version of Stage Builder. You couldn't have little props moving in the background, and so that's definitely one reason why the Stage Builder in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate is the best in the series. I'll never forget how disappointed I was when I saw Stage Builder was not gonna return in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, but getting it as free DLC is still pretty amazing. I just wish it wasn't so limited. How in the heck? Does anyone else miss NES's old victory theme, like the one that was used in Melee? And I missed that one. I thought that one was so much better than whatever they're using here. So here is a custom stage. This is one I did not make. It's one I found on the community, and it's Taboo, the final boss from Super Smash Bros. Brawl. And I must say, I really love how this stage turned out. It looks really cool, but man, is it difficult because of these gusts of wind that occur when Taboo flaps his wings. This is still a very impressive stage, though. It looks amazing, it works amazing, but it is quite a challenge. Man, could you imagine how much different this, like, the spirit mode in this game would have been if Stage Builder was available to begin with? Imagine that if there actually were, like, you know, if spirit battles actually took place on a custom stage made by, like, workers of the game, and they were, you know, that would have helped make some of these spirit battles feel more believable. I mean, imagine during the Taboo spirit battle if you fought on a stage like the one we were just fighting on. That would have been really cool. And so here, although you can't really see him right now until the camera zooms out much later, this is a stage based on Cuphead. Very good game. This is also a stage I did not make, it's one I found. But I really do like this stage. It is really well made. I also love the game too, but man, is it difficult. I really wish I could. I'm real happy to see the game got recently released for Switch, and I would buy it because it's, a cheap game, and it's a really good game too, but I already have it on Xbox One, and like I said, the game is very difficult, so unless they add some kind of feature to allow you to transfer your save data from the Xbox One version over to the Switch version, I unfortunately don't think I'm going to be buying this game again anytime soon. I still have not beaten the Xbox One version. I made it to the final world, but, some of those bosses, I'll admit, are a little too difficult for me to beat without, heck, just the easy mode version of it is hard, but I've at least beaten all the easy mode bosses from, like, the first world and the second world. Heck, the first world, I actually beat all the bosses on the hardest difficulty, but I could not beat a single boss in the second world on hard difficulty, and upon learning how you have to beat all of them on the hardest difficulty in order to face the final boss, that was a little unnerving for me, and it kind of pressured me to not want to play the game much more. But it's a shame though, because it's a really good game. I love the animation, I love the creativity, the music. It really is a 1940s cartoon brought to life. I'm sorry, a 1930s cartoon brought to life. I really do hope if they ever do make a sequel to Cuphead, I hope they keep in mind that the game's difficulty wasn't for everyone, so I hope, it's like if they want to give an optional difficulty mode, that's fine, but, don't rule out the final battle only for those who can handle the hardest difficulty, because that's just a little unfair. That's one thing I like about a lot of Nintendo games nowadays. Like, although I never played the Nintendo games on, like, the easiest, like how Super Mario Odyssey has, like, a really easy mode, even the new Yoshi game has a real easy mode, I never go for those, but I like how they're there, though. Very convenient for those who want to play the game and enjoy it. Not everyone enjoys challenging difficulty. Some just want to have fun and feel like they're unstoppable, and even with limitations, games can still be hard for some people, and so I like how a lot of game developers keep that in mind nowadays. And I find it ridiculous when people get mad at Nintendo for making things like that optional. I remember a lot of people gave Kingdom Hearts 3 a hard time because they thought it was too easy, and honestly, I thought the game was more fun with its easier difficulty. So I've had some painful memories playing some early parts of Kingdom Hearts as a kid, and the game does not do a very good job at, it's a game that's aimed for kids, but the gameplay is far from it. It's more like for teenagers who played a bunch of JRPGs in the past, and, it's definitely not an easy game for kids to get started with, and Kingdom Hearts 3 tried making it a little more accessible, and I thought it worked. I didn't feel like it dumbed down the gameplay, I thought it enhanced the gameplay, because of how advanced a lot of the combat was now. To me, it wasn't that the game was made easier, it was just made that the combat was more accessible. It allowed you to do more, so you had better chances of staying alive. That's just the way I look at it, but regardless, though, I heard that game now has a critical mode, so there you go, people who were crying about the game being too easy. Now you finally can see yourself die multiple times. I don't know why people would want that, but that's one reason why I'm not a huge fan of retro video games, because a lot of people say, oh, those games were brutally hard. To me, I don't see them as hard games. I actually see them as flawed games. Not to disrespect anyone who likes them, but I just look at those games as, they were just ideas at the time, but the technology wasn't far enough for them to be made the way developers wanted them to. And, that's very obvious with not only the visuals of certain games, but even the music. You can tell they wanted to do something better, but restrictions caused them to have to work around a lot of obstacles. And a lot of old video games are very glitchy, too, and honestly, I feel that's the main reason video games were difficult back then. They weren't intentionally difficult. Some were, like, I can believe that some video games were intentionally difficult, like, Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels, or Super Mario Bros. 2, whatever you want to call it. That, without a doubt, was intentionally supposed to be hard. It was, you know, supposed to be a challenge for those who've already been through the original Mario game and wanted a bigger challenge. And so Nintendo gave them that by making a game that was so hard that not even a lot of diehard Mario fans can handle it. And so, but for the most part, a lot of games that I feel, you know, especially playing through like the NES classics on Nintendo Switch's, you know, like classic games catalog, it's I can just tell that a lot of these games, you know, they're not difficult because they're difficult because they're flawed. Whether it's you know, bad frame rates, really bad controls, bad input, there's just so many things that make a lot of these retro video games just hard to play. It has nothing to do with the game itself. It's I don't know. It's like difficulty definitely does play a part, but I think you know, these games would be easier if they weren't so technically flawed. And that's one reason why I really appreciate how far video games have come nowadays. Good ones, that is. I really like, whoever made this did a really good job. So this is a Kingdom Hearts stage. It has both the Kingdom Hearts logo and a giant keyblade. For this stage, I thought it would be appropriate to fight as Cloud Strife. The closest thing we'll get to Kingdom Hearts in this game. Whoops. I'll admit, as cool as it would be to see Sora in Kingdom Hearts, as cool as it would be to see Sora in Super Smash Bros., I doubt we're ever going to see that happen. And that's mostly because of how expensive it would be. Because keep in mind, Sora is not just a Square Enix property. He's partially owned by Disney as well. So, if Nintendo really wanted Sora in Smash Bros., they wouldn't have to pay the rights from both Final Fantasy, Square Enix. They'd have to also pay Disney, and so that sounds like a lot of trouble just for one character to appear in a game that's already got so many crossover characters. I mean, honestly, I see it more likely for Nintendo to strike a deal with Microsoft to get Banjo and Kazooie in here. Heck, I'd even see it more likely to see Conker from Conker's Bad Fur Day in here. And even that's kind of unlikely, but I think, like, the chances, it's not impossible, though, because Nintendo seems to be open to the idea of having M-rated characters in this game. Of course, it all started with Snake in Super Smash Bros. Brawl, but even Bayonetta, who was a character that a lot of people did not see ever being considered for Smash Brothers, because, although Metal Gear Solid is an M-rated series, there's no doubt that Bayonetta has a lot more mature content in those games compared to Metal Gear Solid series. And so it's like, if Bayonetta can get into Smash Brothers, then I don't see why they would be against Conker being in it. You gotta admit though, Conker, he would probably have a pretty cool moveset, because, you know, the main gameplay gimmick of Conker's Bad Fur Day was the context-sensitive things where Conker could pull out whatever he wanted at that moment in time, and so imagine him having like a moveset where like his down special would be where he turns into an anvil and can smash into things. His basic hit attacks would be it could be like his frying pan and possibly even his baseball bat from Live and Reloaded. You'd have his old slingshot. Let's see, his war-inspired attacks. You would have like possibly his chainsaw. There's just so much that they could do with Conker if they made him a playable character, and you know, I think Conker would work. Like, if they could tone Bayonetta and Snake down to fit in Smash Bros., then I don't see why Conker wouldn't be able to. But chances are, if there were to ever be an exception for any rare character to be in Smash Bros., it would have to be Banjo and Kazooie. They just have so much history with Nintendo. If you ask me, they still deserve to be with Nintendo. I don't know why Microsoft ever bought out Rare in the first place. They showed no respect for the characters or the workers who brought those characters to life. It's just really sad to, you know, think of what could have been if Microsoft never bought out Rare. I mean, think of all the games we would have got for GameCube and beyond if Rare stayed with Nintendo. I mean, so many games that Microsoft canceled. Banjo 3E, the original intended version of Cameo Elements of Power, Conquer 2, Perfect Dark 2, Cameo 2, a bunch of Donkey Kong games like Donkey Kong Racing, Donkey Kong Coconut Crackers, Diddy Kong Pilot. There's just so much that Rare, and, you know, I really do wish that we could see more Donkey Kong games made by Rare. I don't care what anyone says, I love Donkey Kong 64. The game may not be perfect, but damn, it was a really huge game for its time. So many playable characters, so many collectibles, the worlds were big, the bosses were memorable. I just loved that game. And it saddens me that we never got another Donkey Kong game like that. I've always wanted another Donkey Kong game, multiple playable characters. I just loved that game so much. It's honestly my favorite Donkey Kong game in the whole series. So many people say like Donkey Kong Country 2 is the best Donkey Kong game. I always say Donkey Kong 64. Yes, the minigames in that game do suck. I do agree with that. If they were to ever remake Donkey Kong 64, I'd happily encourage them to get rid of the minigames, especially the Donkey Kong Arcade Challenge. That was the worst. But you know, if they can keep the original gameplay, I didn't mind the collectibles. That was actually one of my favorite parts of the game, just going around collecting everything as all the different Kongs. That was fun. It's amazing how a game from like 1999 has more content in it than most games made nowadays that aren't open world RPGs. I'm honestly not a huge fan of open world games. I really do kind of miss like the simplicity of N64 games, because although they were more limited and simpler, they had more ideas. They had more to do somehow. There was more exploration, more things to unlock, and nowadays, well, there's more creativity too, and which is crazy because a lot of the levels were so much smaller, but they caught your attention. Like, that's what I thought, like, when comparing Banjo-Kazooie to Yooka-Laylee. It's like every level in Banjo-Kazooie was so bright, colorful, and it had such creative designs and characters, and there's always something in the distance that caught your eye and it made you want to run over to it and see what was there. And when you did it, you just saw a lot of obstacles or collectibles that it kept you wanting to explore that area for quite some time. Yooka-Laylee, it's like a lot of the levels just recycled a lot of content. So, you know, it's like you go to one level, you'll see the same kind of trees everywhere, the same kind of colors, and you won't see like any really bizarre characters in the background that make, like, I remember, like, you know, it's like when playing Banjo-Kazooie, you go to Treasure Trove Cove, and, you know, you see, like, a giant hermit crab in the background. You're wondering, what the heck is that? So you run over to it, and then all of a sudden, you know, a boss fight starts. Or in Bubble Gloop Swamp, there's, like, a fork in the road, and it's like, okay, one side there's, like, a giant alligator head, the other there's a giant living turtle. Which path will I take? And it was just so fun to play through those games. And nowadays, I feel like games are too big and open. They try being too realistic. So, it's like everything you see in a video game nowadays, it's stuff that you can see in real life. Oh, look, a giant rock. Oh, look, a bunch of sand. A big wide open field of nothingness. Yawn. I mean, although I loved Super Mario Odyssey for feeling like a mixture of open world and, you know, traditional gameplay, I do kind of admit, though, that I wish the levels were a little more creative, because they kind of had, although they were better, like, I will say Super Mario Odyssey is definitely one of the best 3D platformers in the Mario series. It's like, man, if only it had some of that visual creative flair that Rare was known for. I mean, and that's one reason why I really wish to see a return from Rareware, you know. Let's see, like, what they would do if they made a more open-world Banjo-Kazooie game. One that feels more inspired by Banjo-Kazooie and less inspired by Yooka-Laylee. So although Super Mario Odyssey had some really cool ideas, the problem is that a lot of its levels were too realistic, and it didn't have a whole lot of amazing fantasy elements. Like, heck, even, like, one of my biggest complaints about Mario Galaxy was that it wasn't open world enough. But, I will admit, though, that what made up for it was how creative a lot of the stages looked and felt. I mean, you know, you had, like, the giant beehive level, and, you know, it's like one of the big defining features of that level was, a giant queen bee. You know, it's like, she definitely stood out. You've never seen anything like that in a Mario game, or even a video game in general. The graphics on that character were, well, quite ahead of its time, too, for a Wii game. I mean, they actually made her look fuzzy like an actual bee. And so that, you know, that was something you've never seen in a Mario game before. And I feel like Super Mario Odyssey, it relied a lot on, you know, nostalgia, basically. But even then, I will admit, though, Mario Odyssey still was one of the better Mario games. It still was creative. I just kind of wish it steered away from the more realistic-looking levels. Well, it's like, if the levels weren't too realistic, they were too simplified. It's like, you know, although I can't say I like the level that much, there is one level I like just for its appearance alone, and that was the, like, the Lost Island level. You know, it was like the first point in the game where Mario lost Cappy and you had to find him in that jungle. And one reason why I love that level so much is because it looked like the opening sequence of Yoshi's Island brought to life. And because Yoshi's Island had like those strange-looking trees where it looked like the leaves were made of plastic, and it had like all these bizarre, abstract-looking leaf shapes and stuff like that. And I loved how Super Mario Odyssey made a level that looked like an actual computer-animated version of that opening from Yoshi's Island. I thought, like, I'm not sure if that was the intention, but that's what I got from it. It's like, oh my god, this looks like Yoshi's Island. That's really cool. But then you have, like, the level, like, I think one of the most disappointing levels in Super Mario Odyssey, in my opinion, was the, I can't remember the name of it, but it was the food world, the cook world, where, you know, you had, like, all the weird-looking food items. That just looked like a really lazy level. Some people might call it stylish or artistic. I just thought it looked lazy. All these, I mean, even N64 games had more detail than that. I just thought it was a really ugly world with its colors, its really blocky-looking vegetables everywhere, and that was the most forgettable level for me. But yeah, still, although Super Mario Odyssey isn't perfect, I'd still, you know, I still have more fun playing a game like that compared to Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Now, don't get me wrong, Breath of the Wild is not a bad game. Heck, I had a lot of fun playing it at first, but I thought it got old really fast. Although there's a lot to do in the game, it's just not as fun as it should be. A lot of it just feels like you're roaming around a huge world of nothingness. Oh look, more grass. Oh look, more sky, more cliffs. Where's all this advanced, like, fantasy stuff that were well known across, like, the original games? I mean, it's sad how a smaller game like Ocarina of Time had more memorable moments than a game that was designed to be endless, according to Nintendo. Endless is one thing, but boring is another. It's like, if you're gonna make a game packed with content, make it fun. I'm surprised we have not gotten a stage like this in Smash Bros. Before. I mean, yes, we've gotten stages that were, you know, centered around Wispy Woods, but never designed the way the original boss fight was, because the original boss fight of Wispy Woods wasn't where he was in the center of the stage, you know, they had it where he was at the very side of the stage, and above the top of the entire stage were his, you know, the leaves of all these other trees. We saw all these apples that would drop, and so yeah, I'm surprised they never made a stage directly inspired by the original Wispy Woods boss fight. The closest thing we got to it was in the 3DS version, when we got a stage inspired by Kirby Dream Land, but it didn't have Wispy Woods, unfortunately. But I do like how that stage made a comeback here, though. I'm surprised we never got a stage that had Kracko in it. Krakow is always one of my favorite Kirby bosses, and he's pretty much like the second in command when it comes to Wispy Woods, because Wispy Woods is like the always guaranteed like carnation of some form in Kirby games, where he's a boss fight where you can expect one way or another, and if it's not Wispy Woods, then you'll see Krakow as well, most likely. It's like if any other boss is going to return, it'll be Krakow. Well, that's all I have to show for now. Thank you for watching. See you next time. Goodbye.